Reviews. Tetris, an utterly mesmerizing surprised on how much tension such a generic history of the could make a real spy thriller behind the Iron Curtain, for the righteous rights ought patency over the maybe most successful game in the history of digital gaming, namely, Tetris. This is a well-acted, well-set and very well acclimatized and extremely authentically made production on the infancy of the digital gaming era. The cast makes this story very fun to follow, even for me, the grumpy old man that grew up a generation before all this happened, when the electric typewriter and electronic green glowing calculator was the top of the hype. So if you're interested in the story behind digital stuff and all the serendipitous ways destiny may cross to make you a happy gamer, then this film is a recommendation. It's funded by Apple, but who cares when the film is good. Very engaging film. By the time you get to the mandatory Hollywood car chase, you do guess you're being shown nonsense, so I asked ChatGPT how accurate the movie is, which it doesn't know, and had to resort to using good old Google. The car chase is false. But pretty much everything else is true, apparently. The translator was indeed KGB, even though Hank knew from the outset. The shenanigans of three bidders being present in the building is true. The inventor moving to the US is true, and the friendship building in Moscow is true. There's no indication that the bribing of the official was true. Then again, Maxwell was a crook, so putting my crook hat on, it makes sense. All in all, they had a really engaging legal battle. The movie was much better than I anticipated. The car chase and drama around the airport at the end is fictional, but doesn't spoil the movie. The movie had to be made exciting, so there are some exaggerated elements, but it was absolutely fun and exciting. Being born behind the Iron Curtain before this all happened, I find it amazing that some reviewers here say this is some anti-communist propaganda, when this is pretty much how it was back then. So don't listen to the haters. The actual people were involved in making this film as accurate as possible while still being a Hollywood movie. And yes, you lived in the same apartment the government gave you. No, you could not freely speak, think, and yes, the secret police and army of civilian informers were infiltrated in every part of society. And there was not always food you could buy, and it was certainly amazing to have bananas in the stores. Not in the movie. People who grew up in the West and not in the former Soviet bloc have zero understanding of how life was back then, and can be forgiven to think that this and other accounts of the Soviet era are some sort of parodies, the sad truth that they aren't nearly as exaggerated as you might think. It was pretty bad back then. This movie is absolutely excellent. Of course, the movie isn't a 100% true story. Who cares? It's a blast. To all of the haters who claim the film is anti-Soviet propaganda, they obviously never spent a minute in a communist country during the Cold War. My wife's family escaped from Romania during the height of the Cold War, and everything in this film portraying how communist countries were during the Cold War is accurate. There were long lines just to get a pound of rice. Very few families got meat or fish. The KGB went away everywhere and spied on everyone. Neighbors ratted out neighbors. Corruption was rampant. The architecture was cold, dark, and bleak. Of course, this movie was a comedy, so they took everything to an extreme, but all in all, it was a very accurate portrayal of the USSR during the Cold War. I never knew this entire backstory behind the success of Tetris. I was intrigued when I first saw the trailer and wondered if it could be any fun or good. I'm glad to say it's a pretty cool movie, and I did enjoy it quite a ton. Taron Egerton did such a good job in the role and did some good acting, and I think this movie was a pretty fun time, and the whole story behind Tetris. I think it was a pretty solid movie, and now I want to play some Tetris after watching this movie. This isn't groundbreaking, but it's just a fun time in general, which I think people should watch, and I recommend watching it. As Tetris 2023 release, 117 minutes. Opens, we are reminded that this is based on a true story, and we are in Level 1, 1988, as Hank Rogers is at the Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas, trying and failing to push a video game called Go. In another booth, someone is hawking a game called Tetris, and after trying out the game for a few minutes, Rogers is completely bowled over. He needs to find a way to get a license to that game, one way or another. At this point, we are less than 10 minutes into the movie. Couple of comments. This is the latest film from Scottish director John Baird, Stan and Ollie. Here he brings the origin story of how the game, Tetris became a worldwide phenom, but not before there was a frenzy over the legal rights, as fragmented as they were both as to territories and as to platforms, video, arcade, handheld, etc. Closing parenthesis. In essence, this is a legal drama, and hence one cannot assume that this would be an enjoyable or engaging film to watch. But as it turns out, this is very much enjoyable and engaging. Mostly set in the late 80s and early 90s, and effortlessly shifting settings from the US to Japan to the UK to the USSR, it becomes a zany affair, full of energy. Taron Egerton Kingsman, Rocketman, as Hank Rogers is clearly having a ball with this role. If you wonder where the film was shot and what location stood in for those 80s-era Soviet buildings, it is in fact Scotland, Aberdeen and Glasgow. Bottom line, I found this movie to be far better than I could have expected. Tetris premiered at last month's South by Southwest Festival to immediate acclaim. It started streaming on Apple TV this weekend, and I couldn't wait to see it. If you are in the mood for a zany legal drama on how Tetris became a mega seller, I'd readily suggest you check this out and draw your own conclusion. Wow, I can't believe how much I enjoyed the new Tetris movie. Who knew that a movie about licensing a video game could be so emotionally engaging? I was hooked from start to finish. The story was surprisingly compelling, without being too complicated or over the top. The focus on the journey of businessman Hank Rogers and the Tetris inventor, Alexei Pajitnov, was just the right balance of drama and fun. And the way they captured the excitement and anticipation of bringing the game to the world was thrilling. The acting in this movie was top tier. Taron Egerton delivered an incredible performance as Rogers, and I was impressed by how he brought so much depth to his character. The chemistry between him and the rest of the cast was palpable and made the story even more enjoyable. But let's talk about those plot twists. They were pretty good. I won't give anything away, but there were a few surprises that kept me on the edge of my seat. And the way they resolved the conflicts was satisfying and left me feeling content. Overall, I highly recommend this movie to anyone who loves video games, underdog stories, or just wants a fun and engaging movie experience. The attention to detail in the pixelated graphics and the captivating story make it worth watching. So, if you're looking for a movie that will have you feeling all the emotions, go see Tetris.